Okay, welcome back everyone. These videos are getting later and later in the evening, but that's okay. I just got to figure out my schedule a little bit. So I talked yesterday about how we're just going to have 3 weapons, and I was going to do a little bit of tidying up. And I'm not all the way there. I found out that actually, if I just clone that and change all these things, I need to create abilities for these. So clicking doesn't do anything for the bow, and clicking doesn't do anything for the mace. And see, I don't like that. It's very subtle, but when we pick up this mace and then we pick up the sword, we don't have that animation play. But that should be a pretty straightforward fix. However, clicking for this one does work as intended, which is what we want. And now if we press 2, and then we press 3, so they're all playing their animations properly, and I can jump between them, and they're all doing the correct transition with their animations. And if I press 1 again, that's nice, and I press 2, and I press 2 again, that's nice, and I can press 3, press 3 again, and that's nice. And I can go 3, 1, in whatever order I really want, and it's all kind of clean and consistent in terms of switching between weapons looks how I'm wanting it to look. And the inventory is just going to be here so we can read, have a little bit of exposition in the story of the world. Because that's something else I realized, sometimes I don't want to talk about how hard making video games is. My shtick, my selling point for my channel is that making games is fun. We love making games, so I don't want to complain about it. But sometimes I'll lose focus on why or what it is I'm trying to do, and I'll think this is not going to be fun. But then I remember the thing that I found so fun was actually that world. And right now we can't see that world because we just see this with this, So I gotta trust the process. In time, once all the systems are working and we start developing the world a little bit better, and we have some characters and we can talk to them, we have story, we have plot, immersion, and also music. Music really makes a very large impact on kind of getting you immersed in that world. And there's no world right now, it's all silent. There's no music right now, it's all just silence. But also you can see I need to set the shader on these two so that they're the same as this one, so it gets affected by the lighting. But last thing I'll show you, we have the bow equipped, the sun is right there, we're going to save, we're going to switch to our sword, we're going to load back. Hey, and we have our bow equipped, and we can have our bow unequipped, and save, and load. So we are saving which weapon is equipped and if it's equipped or not, so that's all good. So I'd say the main thing I wanted to do, which was switching from the equip button to using 1, 2, and 3, and getting everything to save and load properly so we know which weapon we're using. That's all good. So there's only 2 issues, and there's a big issue and a little issue. The big issue being we can click and we can attack, but when we click and attack, nothing, and when we click and attack, nothing. So that's a big issue, obviously. And I kind of know why, and it's to do with when I was following the tutorial, we kind of went all the way through implementing one weapon, and then with the other 2 weapons I kind of just went on my own, and so I probably skipped some of the steps that are involved in that, like I need to create an ability and connect the ability to the weapon via a tag, and I have tried creating the ability for the mace, but I still feel that there's some step that I might be missing. So hopefully tomorrow we'll have the mace working the way that we should, and we'll have the sword working, because the sword and the mace basically work the same way. It's just the speed and the effect that they're applying on the enemy is going to be a bit different. And with the bow, that's probably the other thing I'm going to try and do tomorrow, if I have time, if I can get the other stuff done, is have it so that we can click and hold to draw the bow, and then release the click to shoot the bow. So it's a little bit different to these two. These two you just click and hold, and he's just attacking constantly. But with this one it is click and hold. So those are the big issues, is actually get these other weapons to be working properly. Because as I was saying, the sword does work. We can see that it's hitting the world. You know, the world is reacting to what the sword is doing. So it would be really great if tomorrow, you know, we could shoot the floor and actually see it reacting with that click and hold and then release action going on, and have the same as the sword with this one. But it's going to have a little bit of a shorter range than the sword, the mace. The mace will have a slightly shorter range than the sword. But there was one small issue, and I think I could probably fix this. It's not very difficult. But, like, if I pick the sword up, it plays its animation like we want it to. And this one, the sword, the mace and the bow both play the animation properly. But if we, as we saw this in the beginning, if we pick the other ones up first, and then we pick that one up, it just jumps straight to its position when it should be playing that little animation. So that's a small issue, and I might be able to fix that one pretty easily. So I might do that one first. I might even do that one tonight after this video, if I've still got the energy for it. But then tomorrow we'll look at getting those other two weapons working properly, getting them reacting to the world, and then we can finally perhaps move on to adding some enemies. I think we can add some enemies before we go on to getting the spells up, because we should have an icon here for the currently equipped weapon, even though we won't be using this to control that stuff. We'll just be using this. And then down here we'll be able to click this button to switch from the inventory to the spell inventory. And yeah, that's pretty much it for now, I think. Get an enemy in, and then maybe start thinking about the spells, because the spells are going to be when we press C. So yeah, I don't want to talk for too long. I think I've said enough already. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to continue these videos. Yeah, I'm really enjoying the process of documenting it and sharing it with people, so that I feel like I'll get more views when it actually looks good. I think the reason people aren't watching is just because it doesn't look that great. But I like my idea. My idea being, let's get all the hard stuff done first. Let's get all these systems functioning and working, and actually have the game be a little bit fun. But then I have to remember that what I was saying before is that the fun actually comes from looking at the beautiful world. And so a lot of the fun does come from having really nice assets. So I'll have to get all those mechanics working and functioning properly. And once all the mechanics are working functionally properly, we can go ahead and start upgrading all of our assets so that they start looking a lot more slick and cool, and start doing the longest part, I think, for the game, which will be all the dungeons. I have to build all those dungeons, and I have to decide about rewards. But speaking a little bit about that, I'll talk a little bit about that. So I think there's 3 different trees, because does that still work? Yes, it does. So just looking at the dots that are within the green, the dots that aren't part of the lines that make up the town and the roads, but all those other dots, like this dot here, or this dot here, or what's the other color? Can't really tell. Yeah, it's like a dark blue, a dark red, and a dark green. Dark green, dark blue, dark green, and dark red. Yeah. So those 3 are different types of dungeons. And it's going to be the whole, like, the things that I use to build the dungeon. So, like, the whole aesthetic of the architecture is going to be different. Like, one of them is going to be a cave system, one of them is going to be like a fortress, and one of them is going to be like an ancient ruin. So they'll all look very different to each other. They'll have different traps, different hazards, and the types of enemies that you encounter within them will be different. But also, at the end of each dungeon, there needs to be a reward, a feeling of player growth, because we're not going to do a level system. We're just going to have, you went and completed that dungeon, and now for the rest of your playthrough, you've got something that you can use. Because I don't want that redundancy of I finished the dungeon and I got this sword, and then I finished this other dungeon much later and I got a better sword, so that sword that I got back then is now worthless. We don't want that. So yeah, with the fortresses, I'm thinking it's all going to be the mundane equipment. And so we'll start the game with our sword, but we will have to go into those dungeons to find the mace, and to find the bow, and to find the shield, and also to find the different pieces of armor that the player will be wearing. And then I thought about how the ancient ruins will have magical items, so it'll either be magical items that add some kind of ability that you didn't have before, or they will just unlock the different spells. In the way that this unlocks the different items that go in the inventory, in the armor and the weapons section, the ancient ruins will unlock the spell casting abilities that we have. And then the caves will unlock permanent increases to the player's health or to the player's mana, so that, yeah, we have different types of equipment for the fortress and for the ancient ruin, and for the cave we're just directly increasing the power behind what's using that equipment. And I feel like that way, the only way that you'll really be able to finish the game is if you go to a fortress and then a ruin and then a cave and then another fortress. Like, you can't go fortress, 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 cave, 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 because, you know, if you keep going to the caves, eventually you're going to be encountering things in the caves which will require use of the bow or the mace, or they might you might need a bit more armor. So yeah, that's kind of what the quest system is for. The quest system is to sort of tell you, you should go to this cave now, you should go to this dungeon now, you should go to this fortress. I say dungeon, fortress, they're the same thing. Ruined, yes. And they'll kind of guide and prompt you, so there's a little bit more of context, you know. I mean, this is where it's tricky, you know, because I'm sort of trying to balance a non-linear open world with a linear progression system. And I mean, it's a thing that a lot of games have challenges with. So I can remember in Skyrim, you can go right into Bleak Falls Barrow, and you can pick up the Golden Claw, and then you can go to that guy, and he's like, hey, can you go to that place and get me that thing? And you're like, oh, you mean this thing? And they were a little bit tongue-in-cheek about it, because they knew they had to think about how are we going to solve this. Because we're letting the player go wherever they want right from the get-go. And so what's stopping them from just going into the dungeons first, and then talking to the people after the fact? And so you will be able to do that in this game, I'm imagining. But there's also cheap ways where I could kind of lock it, where it's like they're all locked, and you can only go to the ones that you have a key to, and the only way to get a key is to start the quest. So I could lock it in that way and make it very rigid and linear. Or I could just let players explore and do whatever they want, and have the quests be a thing that they could choose to do if they so wish. So as you can see, still a lot of thought to be had, a lot of decision making to do, but we're getting there slowly. We've got our 3 different weapons, and we're not going to go any further than that. We're not going to add more weapons. We just have to get the weapons that we have to all work properly. We've got to introduce enemies, and I'm pretty sure, I haven't watched it yet, but what I'm getting at is the tutorial series I've been following so far for a lot of these things. I think the next video they're adding enemies, and I'm pretty sure their enemy is just a single sprite that's going to be facing the player wherever the player looks. But I have looked around already, because this is something that I made for Unity, and it's something that I made for Godot, and so I know that it can be done, and there are other tutorials that I can use. So I will be linking those in there if I do use them, which I very likely will use them. And that is to have the 8 directional sprites, so that I can run around the enemy and have the illusion of them having them being a three-dimensional object, even though they're just that flat sprite. I really like that effect. I think it's quite cool. And something else I thought about that would be really cool. You know, it's one of those things that really pushed my brain because I thought that's not possible. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't look good. But I think is it Dusk? Part of that generation of boomer shooters that came out when it was really blowing up and lots of people were making boomer shooters. I think it was Dusk, where he could look down and see his body. You know, and that blew my mind because I've seen that in 3D games. Because you know you have this three-dimensional body attached to your character, and so you can look down and actually see your body. I think Fear was the first game I played. Wow, it's like, oh, cool, cool. I can see his feet. You know, it's just a really nice little detail, and something that they always neglected in Oblivion, Skyrim. That just really adds a nice level of immersion. And I'm thinking a lot of games get around it by just being in third person. And I do like third person, it's wonderful. But I feel like if I was going to make a third person game, I would be going with a different style. I would be trying to recreate a different sort of game from my childhood. But the game that I'm trying to recreate from my childhood was always first person. But it would be really cool to look down and see your body moving around, and yeah. So yeah, lots of things to do. But I think I've spoken enough for now, so I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks everybody. See ya.